What is up, everybody? Welcome to another video of Map After Hours. It is 1 week later and we are back working on the Subaru again. Today is pretty exciting. It is the day that we assemble the short block. Aric has given me the opportunity to kind of be there with him, get some hands-on, actually helping out assembling the short block. I have never done something like this before, so this is pretty cool. And he's gonna kind of give the rough rundown on what we're doing, what we're putting in, kind of maybe a little bit of the process. I'm not exactly sure, but he'll kind of give us the rundown of that. Still waiting for the cylinder heads to come in from Subaru. Actually, I do believe they are back in the warehouse. Doesn't really matter, doesn't really help us because we're still waiting on the cams from GSC, but a week out from with those guys. So I would say the long block will be fully assembled, timed and everything in about 2 weeks. It's my guess. But I kind of wanted to show you guys what we still need to get. I do have a good amount of stuff, you know, like in the back seat of the Subaru, you know, we got like the main engine harness, just some random stuff that we pulled out that was salvageable. Cannot say that word. I have my bottom drawer at my desk here that is filled with Ziploc baggies of bolts. And yeah, I mean, we just kind of slowly starting to piece stuff together, but I'm gonna kind of show you guys what we need to get here. So what we got here is we need to get the injector dynamic 1300X's. Those will be the ones that we're gonna run on the car. We need to get the 5858. We are getting the manifold that Andrew is going to be fabbing up back there. We're going to be running the Tome TI most likely. So yeah, we're doing the torque solutions, trans pitch, engine mounts. We're going to get the Mishimoto upper and lower radiator hose. Mishimoto, their whole like hose kit. The fan shroud, the X-line radiator from Mishimoto. The drive shaft shop one piece aluminum. So that one's going to be pretty sweet as I kind of toasted my old one and threw it away. And then the competition twin disc clutch. But anyways, so what we have so far that I do have is I have the Illuminati billet aluminum TGV delete with the fuel rail that is billet as well. Super high quality stuff. We have 2 new cam gears from Subaru, but for the most part it's coming along. There's still a shitload of stuff to get, but let's go back there, let's go back with Aric and let's assemble this short block.
What's up, guys? It's Aric at Modern Automotive Performance. This is part 2 of Luke's STi After Hours project. We got the engine all fully machined, and I just went through and blueprinted everything just to make sure that I'm not going to have any issues that would be unforeseen. So I got the crank measured, like the crank itself is measured, the rods are measured, the pistons, bores, pins. So we're gonna get set up to check all of his bearing clearances, and then once his bearing clearances are set, we're gonna put the rods on the crank, drop them in, test fit, make sure nothing hits, and then if that goes all good, we're gonna take it all apart, put RTV in, new seals and O-rings in, and we're gonna move on to getting the rings filed, and then once we get the rings filed, we're gonna pop the pistons in, and we'll get all the OEM oil plugs and cylinder plugs in and get this thing set up for an oil pump and oil pan, head studs, gaskets, and then gonna start on his heads after this, and then we'll get it all back together, get it all timed up, and drop it back in the car. So I'm gonna get ahead and start working on this. I'm gonna start with the rods. We're using King XP bearings for this build, the Manly H series tough H-beam rods. We're gonna set up the bearing clearance to check these rods with these bearings. So first thing with everything is obviously nothing that comes out of a box is clean enough to install into an engine without just asking for some sort of damage. The coating that is sprayed onto this from King is like a rust preventative. So we want to take that off for checking our bearing clearances. I already have the rods already clean from when I was doing the blueprinting. So we'll just get this all opened up and go through and hand wipe each one of these down with a little brake clean. Pop them into the rods, we'll get them torqued up. These rods are using 30 weight oil, no ARP lube. Manly's H-beam rods are that style, so you can do it by the stretch method or by the foot-pound method. I'm going to be using a foot-pound method for these ones just for repeatability with torquing them up, untorquing them, and then torquing them onto the crank for the install. And just getting into it, I see that these bearings are pretty clean. Not too much of a coating on them, but still, after the brake clean evaporates off the rag, you can really see the actual spray that is overlaid from the factory. Just so that these things don't get bad, like in shipping and transit, so that the customer gets a quality product. Pretty much this is a necessity for any bearing measurements or just engine installation. It's a good peace of mind to know that you're installing clean bearings. After that, we'll get the main bearings put into the block, and we'll dry assemble that without RTV and check our main bearing clearance, and then once that's good to go, it's the first part of the assembly process will start. So we're still on bearing clearances. We'll take our fancy little rod spreader, which makes this a nice little tool, so you don't have to hit your main caps or hit your rod caps and possibly damage threads. One shell, and pop it in. I always kind of just give these things a rock to make sure they're fully seated. We'll take the other shell, put it into the small end of the rod. Back together it goes. I'm going to add some additional 30 weight oil every time we put these rod bolts in and torque them up, just so that we know that we won't have any gulling of the threads. Nice thing about these H-beam rods compared to an I-beam rod for this particular style build is that it's not like a heavy rotating assembly. Pretty much like the perfect little street setup. You missed all the fun stuff where I measured a couple hundred things. It's always a good time. So yeah, we're gonna take this, and before we put any torque to them, we're just gonna go through and snug them down. And then we're gonna, bummer, we're going to the other place. So we're gonna take this over to my vise. Unfortunately, these Subaru rods are a little bit shallower, narrower than the 4G rods that we just had a huge batch of those go through. So Manly recommends 55 to 65 with 30 weight oil. In their sheet, it says that they assemble them at 60. So for our bearing test, we're gonna do that 60 foot-pound. So I'll do one clean pull on each side to 60. So now we'll take this, we're gonna pop that right there. So from here, now that I have one, I always do one before I go and put all the bearings into all the rods to get them all torqued up, because if one of them's off, chances are they're all gonna be off, and that's just a waste of time. So this is the first, just kind of like a safety check before you do work that you don't need to do. Our crank spec, so this is our rod journal diameter. So we're gonna set our 2 to 3 to 2.0468. Pop this thing into my vise. I'm gonna transfer my bore gauge that I was using to check the piston pin bores and the rod pin bores. And we'll get set up to that 2.0468 spec, and we'll measure this bearing clearance compared to the size of the crank and see how much we have, and then we'll figure out if we have to put undersize or oversize of the standard king bearing to get the bearing clearance that we want. But I'll check it this way, and then I'll check it this way. So this one is good. So this rod spec'd out good. So we'll move to the next one. So realistically, I'm just going around anything that goes to the outside, not back into the oil pan. So like all the case bolts and whatnot, all go to the outside. Too much RTV in a Subaru is a bad thing because it actually changes the size. There's physically something in between the block halves. You know, this liquid, and that takes up a certain amount of housing spec. Just want to go through and kind of just wipe off most of the excess. So that's set up to bolt on. So I'm just gonna let this RTV sit up for like a minute, let it start drying. Works better than just slapping it on wet because it just oozes out everywhere. So now for this time, because obviously if I push it down and try putting the bolts in this way, the RTV is going to ooze out, get all up into this Big Matt's business. So I'm going to go like this, and we'll grab 2 of the sealing washers and the 2 non-sealing smaller bolts. Alright, so then before I go any further, I'll go through and just push these onto the rods to where the pin goes through, so that after we get all this stuff torqued on, I can rotate these over without the pin bores actually touching the cylinder bores. Same with this, I go in and just press these. I do this because those pin bores are gonna ride exactly where the piston skirts do. Obviously I don't want the area where the piston skirts ride to get damaged at all. Move the other case halves bolts.
Torque them down.
And yeah.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that little clip of Aric explaining what he was doing of the assembly process of the short block and the time lapse of installing. I was able to firsthand be right next to him through the process of the install. I wasn't expecting that he was going to let me be there, but he was pretty much explaining the whole time of what he was doing, so it was super cool. Thank you, Aric, for letting me do that. So I'm gonna go back there, kind of show you guys what he did and what it looks like now. Looks super awesome. Next week we have some pretty cool stuff planned. Hopefully, if it's not next week, it'll be that following week for sure, and it'll be some pretty cool stuff. So stay tuned for that. Now, what we did for the short block, if I didn't explain, I want to correct myself on one thing, but we did, we started off with OEM case halves. They got bored out to 99.75. We just did the standard King main and rod bearings, excuse me. Braden nitrated crank from Subaru. The Manly Tough H-beams, not the Turbo Tough. The Turbo Tough is the I-beams, so I want to correct myself on that one. I said that wrong in the last video. And then we did the Wiseco forged pistons. So super cool. It's an awesome just stage 2 short block. Super good for my application of just being on the street, sometimes going to the track, not going too crazy on it. But next week is going to be some pretty cool stuff planned. Hopefully getting the heads assembled and a bunch of stuff on the block to make it the complete long block, timed and everything. So stay tuned for that. Some really cool stuff is coming up for next week, but I'm gonna go back there and show you guys what we got going and what it looks like now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and stay tuned for the next series of my build. So thank you so much. You know, I'm gonna end it differently because that sucked. So here she is, assembled and good to go. Looks super clean. Started off as used case halves, stripped them down. It was a perfect short block to start with. So if you guys want this same short block as me, we will put it in the description. You guys can get the exact same short block as me off our website. It is a great stage 2 short block for any street application, and of course taking it to the track as well. It does use the stock sleeve, so there's no CSS work or, you know, sleeve work, like, you know, obviously sleeving the block. So stock sleeves, great application for what I'm going for, you know, a good 500, 5 to 550. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the little process of, you know, Aric doing it, and when you can see firsthand on how they do things here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and again, I hope you guys enjoy this series because it's gonna be a really fun, exciting series for me. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.